Innate helps companies avoid project surprises, make better informed decisions, share knowledge, and deliver better outcomes. Innate, transforming the way the world builds.
Hello, project people. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Project Chatter podcast. Yes, it's always great to have you with us. Now, if I'm sounding a bit strange, that's because I'm abroad again in a creepy hotel. But look, we've got a great guest today. But before we get into it, I just wanted to say, Dale, you did a bit of hacking on the weekend. What did you do? Where did you go? How was Project Hack 15?
Yeah, Project Hack 15, amazing experience. My first one. Big shout out to Martin Paver and the team from Projecting Success. What a buzz. 2 solid days to try and solve a challenge. Not a lot of time, but you know what? When you start off, you think we'll never get anywhere. And by day 2, you've got something pretty cool. And I think I speak for all the teams when I say it's something that, you only know once you experience. So if you're in the UK, get along to the next one and keep watching the space. We'll get the dates out for you.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds exciting. And Martin, how are you, sir?
Yeah, very good, thanks. How about yourself? How's the hotel room?
Let's not go there. I've had incidences with cockroaches, and I'm not willing to go any further. And if I see a spider, I'm cancelling this podcast. That's it. I'm walking out. But let's introduce our guest, because maybe they'll keep our mind off it. Bojan Tasevski. Did I get that right? How are you, sir?
Yes, great. Thank you.
It's good to have you all the way from Macedonia. Listen, you've got a great subject, because I don't think we've covered this in a while, and it's a long sentence, so I'm not going to go into the title, but I think I wanted to get to the start of where you kind of began your career, your origin story. So where did it all start for you, Bojan?
Okay, so originally from Macedonia, lived in Australia for 12 years, came back to Macedonia in 2002, where I was employed in an ICT company that was pretty much doing developing solutions for project management, project-oriented companies. And I've been in the company for 12 years. For the last 5 years, I'm the managing director of the company. So yeah, that's how I actually started learning project controls and, getting more into it to design solutions that would help out in the long run.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And where did you learn your skills? So you obviously acquired them over a period of time. Where would you say you've learned the most, and how did you learn it?
I'd say I've learned the most in communications with clients, because I don't have a project management background. So most of my background is in the field of management and ICT. So yeah, most of my project management skills I've learned through communications with customers that have become even friends over the years, and attending a lot of conferences throughout the years.
And I realized that I've actually used some of your tools and had no idea you were behind it.
Really?
Particularly, I've used ScheduleReader before, and this is usually when companies don't want to fork out with a P6 Primavera license, or for whatever reason. I think even in defense times, we wouldn't have access to certain projects, and we would use ScheduleReader a few times. But where do you get inspired to build these applications? Is it, as you said, are you talking to a client, and then next thing you're like, you know what, I'm going to build something for them? And how effective is it in terms of competitiveness? Like, is it in the top 10? Does it rank in the top 5? And then we can go into the detail of how you build these software applications.
Yep. So our inspiration comes mainly from seeing the trouble that companies are currently facing in getting everyone involved in the actual project. So basically, all companies are using a project management solution. The problem that we are seeing in our communications with them is that not everyone has the solution to actually participate in all of that good information that actually comes from the schedule. So most of the schedules are just being passed off as PDFs or so on and so forth, but not a lot of communication and not a lot of information is passed down to the people that are actually executing those activities. So basically, our inspiration to create our solutions comes from trying to have everyone informed and keep everyone within the scope of the information without excluding anyone, because we believe that that's the only way that we can have an effective project, and that's the only way we can have an on-budget project.
Mm-hmm. And look, you said, and I'm a big fan of communication. Part of the reason why I had a podcast is because I had all this ample surplus of things to talk about. And one of the things that you've mentioned is that turning your schedule into effective communication. How do we do that? Because I am seeing a bit of a trend towards, I guess, less rigid scheduling software. When I mean that, I mean software that has completely no planning rules. I'll give you an example, Monday.com. So somehow someone's been sold an empty bottle of wine and are acting drunk because they think it actually does plan projects. And so we're seeing it now on actual construction projects being used. And the reason I'm not having a stab at Monday, although I can, is it has no philosophy behind it in which you would deliver a project. Now, we've had a few great guests on lately about critical path method, and maybe that's not the best method. Maybe there are other ways to use it. Maybe there are agile or hybrid ways to deliver projects, which we all understand. But what is the best way to schedule a project from your perspective?
The best way to schedule a project, it really depends on the industry you're in and the actual project. So I think in our industry, for example, the IT industry, we schedule agile, we stick to agile, we do hybrid scheduling as well. Mm-hmm. Whereas in construction, on the other hand, we've got the waterfall methodology, and then I think it pretty much sticks to waterfall in construction. And what I'm seeing is agile is very rarely implemented. So that's what we're actually trying to do with some of our solutions today, is bring the waterfall methodology closer to the agile methodology.
Yeah, I think there's a place for agile as well. And I want, yeah.
So basically, what basically inspired us to do some of our solutions is that one of the main problems that we were seeing within scheduling today and with companies is that most of the companies have different solutions for doing their scheduling or running their projects. So, okay, Monday.com is one of them, but then we've got Primavera P6, we've got Microsoft Project, we've got Asta Power Project. And not only that, we're seeing different companies use different solutions, they work together on one project. Most of those companies come as contractors. So basically, it's really hard for them to put the information together and get it unified so everyone understands a report that's exported, for example, from Microsoft Project if I'm a P6 user. Not only did we see that, but we also saw projects that within one company, different teams were using different solutions, which made it quite hectic for management to see where the project is in certain parts, because the information inflow was coming in from so much different solutions and it was being presented in so much different ways. So what we're currently doing is we're trying to approach that with creating a universal viewer for where you can basically import all of this information, and it gives you a unified view of all of the project information without having to worry about which source it came from, whether it's an S project, whether it's an Excel sheet, or whether it's P6.
Yeah, I'm interested in your thoughts as well on what's more important, the methodology or the software?
I think the software is more important because it's something that we can rely on to run more efficiently. Basically, if you take a look at it, if we take a look at back in time, right, the projects that we were running and that schedulers were running were much less complex than they are today. As time is passing, projects are getting more and more complex. So, you know, we're not just building a building today. We're building landmarks, and investors have a lot of requests that they want their construction project to stand out in the crowd. So I think as time is passing, projects are going to get more and more complex over time. So the methodology, yes, it is very important, but solutions that will power us through these complex projects is also going to be a very, very important factor in all of it.
Mm. That's great, and I'll get one of the boys in here in a second on more pointy questions. And the reason I ask is because you have such great knowledge and background, and it's an interesting subject, right? To get us thinking about it. Again, this is just a conversation between some project geeks, but you know, we talked about touching on effective communication, and I just want to get to that point. And I think this is my view is that sometimes we make projects complex, and I think some of the reasons why we don't go to these more rigid tools is because they seem complicated to use, right? And they seem difficult to read. Is that something that your software is trying to ease in terms of user experience and user understanding and comprehension of plans and particular schedules? Because I think that's a critical mass part. I think with Gantt charts, yes, most people can read one, but they can't analyze it. They could read it. Okay, this activity, then this activity, then this activity. What does that mean? And what do I do about that is actually the hard part. And I'm finding that there's a bit of a trend there. Is that you? Are you also experiencing that?
Yes, of course. So basically, yes, people are quite rigid to change. It's not easy to implement the change to someone using something for such a long period of time, right? So the way we address some of the issues is by trying to design our solutions in a way that, and that's what I think all IT companies should be doing, is trying to design the solutions where they minimize the learning curve for the users. For example, our new tool that we're working on, what we're doing here is we're not changing the way people work. If you're a P6 user, you go ahead and use P6. If you're an MS Project user, go ahead and use MS Project. If you're an Astapower Project user, go ahead and use Astapower Project. What we're basically doing is we're aggregating all of the project information, all of the schedule information within a solution which is an aggregator, and then presenting it in a unified way. So basically, yes, it's very hard to change a solution. It's not only hard as in learning curve wise, but it's also a very time-consuming process. So, you know, changing P6, carving it out of an organization and throwing it aside and deciding to use another tool it's not just about the learning curve. It takes a lot of time to actually get that up and running. So that's something that we as a company are trying to avoid as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you know, just going back to the method versus software, I think as well, a lot of people don't necessarily plan with logic, or they plan with logic to start with, but as soon as the bid is submitted, somehow that goes missing, or it's carved out in the wrong way, and we start on the back foot of an unrealistic schedule. And then if it is a waterfall type method, you're kind of fixed to that because you're and particularly if you're serving a client, you're kept to this monthly drumbeat of reporting. Is there a way, do you think software will get a little bit more, is it going to support, when you mentioned scale before, is in terms of more complex, bigger landmarks, etc. Yes, I think that's right. There'll be more volume and more moving parts. Do you think that then this month-end schedule reporting will change? Because I don't think lagging indicators are useful. And the idea of a schedule is to give you forward-looking indicators. Where is the forecast? Where are you taking me? What's changed and what's going to impact? What's different to my baseline? But arguably, most of the time with waterfall projects, the forecast is constrained and the past isn't reviewed. And you just into this 2-week update, 2-week reporting cycle. I think that's a big problem for schedules and using them as an effective communication tool. What's your view on that?
First of all, I think that with the upgrade of solutions in future, that the 2-week reporting cycles, I think, can be shortened. Because with shorter reporting cycles, we can address problems and get them resolved much quicker. Regarding the, I lost myself.
That's okay, we got you.
No. Can you just repeat the question, because I started off and then.
Yeah, that's okay. So it's related back to your comment around scale and complexity.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah. Yeah, okay. Go.
No, you're good. You're ready when you are.
No, go. Just repeat the question.
Okay, so it's related to complexity and scale. So we're in this kind of monthly drumbeat. And my question is, yes, we'll have more moving parts as projects grow, and they are. We've got lots of mega projects. How will software alleviate that and still be an effective communication tool?
Yep. So software can help out a lot for the reporting cycles and for actually pushing out the information to the correct people at the correct time. I think it's not being done at the moment, and taking a look at the software, as in the percentage of the budget of the projects, it's like really low. It's under 1%, right? So I think that with acquiring new solutions and upgrading the current solutions that we currently have, it will just help in boosting the productivity and the effectiveness of the whole workload that's out on the field.
Yeah, Bojan, if I jump in there, I feel really sorry for you, because after 120 odd episodes, I still don't understand Val, so don't worry about it. Just coming back to this, it is a really fascinating topic, isn't it? Because from one hand, we got software that might help facilitate communication, but on the other hand, you got behaviors. And I guess the challenge for me is, will software change behaviors? Maybe. It can help, but will it transform it? I'm not sure. And then I guess just bring it back into the effective communication bit. You can have technology that pushes out information to people, but it's like taking the horse to the water. You still can't make it drink. And from that perspective, then, do you think technology can make the horse drink the water? Can we go that far? So you can push the information out. Could we then encourage them to consume it? Because I guess for me, and this is, playing devil's advocate, and maybe touching on a bit on what Val and yourself were discussing, you look at a schedule and sort of, it's in 2D, right? You got your activities down the left, you got your time along the bottom, you got your Gantt chart. And how do you bring that to life to say, actually, that bar represents this thing, whether it be, something intangible like software development, functionality, or, something real in terms of the built environment. Perhaps that's where we get into the 3D, 4D, 5D modeling space for built environment. And we've had guests on before where we spoke about even using, 3D modeling in the tech space, even because if you have system design, perhaps, and you say this firmware is talking to this bit of, this hardware over here, you could even potentially replicate that in a sort of three-dimensional way, perhaps in the metaverse or something like that. But I just wonder, I know there's a lot in that comment or question there. Can we truly make the schedule or the tool be as effective as we'd like it to be?
I think it really depends on who's using it and what functionalities we're giving to the people that are using it. So if we're passing the information down to field workers, I think that it should be presented in a very, very easy, readable way without much complexity. So the people that will be using that schedule and that information don't feel intimidated by the solution that they're using. If we can push that out to them through mobile with a simple notification, which well explains what needs to get done and by when it needs to get done, I think it will be a much easier way of communicating it, and I think it will be much easier for the people to accept that information than sharing a 100-page PDF with them and asking them to go through it and find what needs to be done. Then also, as solutions grow and develop, we can also throw in AI in there, which will we can throw in external information sources, for example, weather change and so on. So yes, I think that it really can be an effective information source and a great communication tool, but it really needs to be designed in a way that the people that are getting it can consume that information.
No, thanks for that. And I think if I replay that in I guess in my own words, and correct me if I'm misinterpreting it, it's also a lot to do with what we input into the tool, because I think what you're saying is if we put information or data into a scheduling tool that isn't relevant to the person on site or the engineer that's actually coding up the software to develop the functionality, then it's not relevant. So why should they look at it? Then that brings me to think, well, okay, who's putting the information in? And typically that's a project planner. So then how well skilled or how knowledgeable should they be in the actual subject matter to be able to schedule it? Now, we've often had this discussion around P6 jockeys versus planners. And I think one of my favorite quotes, I think it's still up there, on the definition of a planner by our dear friend Marco Fresenda is, his definition is the definition of a planner is a project manager that looks after time. But then you even get project managers that don't actually understand the engineering solution. So we land in this complex world where I think I agree with you, where tech is definitely part of the solution, but I wonder how that marriage comes together, because one, we need people to embrace it, but two, we also need the inputs to go in so that the outputs are consumable and relative, and also sort of stealing from a few past episodes and guests, Mr. Googe always says, garbage in, gospel out. I think Martin loves that one as well. So I just wonder, at the input stage, regardless if we're using Microsoft Project or P6, so if we're tool agnostic, what tips can you provide to those, I guess, constructing a schedule so that they have the end in mind?
Okay, so P6 as a solution does offer a lot more than just the planning part of the project, right? We've got the steps which pretty much no one fills out. We put in the activities, and that's pretty much where the planning part stops. and then no one's filling in the steps of a certain activity. So in my opinion, these can be pushed out to project managers to fill in, not using P6, but a separate solution that would allow project managers to fill in the steps. And when we do fill in the steps, all of a sudden this waterfall methodology, you get a sense of agile in it with the steps. So yeah, the planner has to be very knowledgeable, but planning it into in depth in the biggest detail, I think is not that necessary by the planner, but can be passed out to project managers to fill in those little bits and pieces.
And so those little bits and pieces, so let's say P6 is a level 2 or 3 at max in terms of detail and granularity, and let's say at level 4 it's too much, right, for the planner, where you don't want a 90,000 line schedule. Those bits and pieces of information and granularity, where are those captured then to make a single data source? Is that if it's not in P6, where does it go? Because it has to relate to that schedule and then get fed back out into the field.
Yes. So basically, we're working on that currently. I'm not sure whether another solution does that, but what you can do is you can integrate that into with what we're trying to do is integrate our solution with P6 and give the possibility to import these steps back into the project upon the project planner's approval. What we're doing here is basically each role, each employee gets a specific role, and then those roles determine what level of access he can have in the actual planning. So yeah, what we're trying to achieve is to chop up the schedule into specific roles. For example, carpeting, tiling, flooring, I don't know, piping. And then once those are sent out to the relevant people, they'll be able to fill in their steps and get a more agile or lean management going for the project and for certain parts of the project.
Yeah, it's interesting points.
What we're trying, what I think should be achieved and should be used much more in projects is the lean management aspect.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I get your point in terms of lean project management, and I think it comes back to your, I think, original answer to one of El's early questions of, what's the best approach, and I think perhaps it depends again, because there is an argument against lean to say, well, if you use lean, you lose the context, because projects are far more complicated than the simple constituent parts we try to break them down into. And when we break them down in two small parts, we actually lose some of the contexts. I think Dave Snowden will probably argue that if you break it down too small, you'll lose all the other effects from other parts. So, but maybe we don't go down that rabbit hole for this one, because I am keen to bring in Machine Gun Martin. And so Machine Gun Martin slot here, Bojan, is really to, see if we can throw you some devil advocate type questions and throw you some curveballs. So over to you, Martin.
That, Dale. I'll try and live up to that. We mentioned 4D planning very, very briefly earlier. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. And BIM 4D, will this help to answer the exam question around communicating schedules effectively? Is it just a passing trend? What's your views on it?
I think it will. I think it will helping the communication process, as it gives a visual presentation of what needs to be done. So as they say, one picture, 1,000 words. Showing the actual model of what needs to be done and presenting it in a way that's visual is, I think, one of the best means of communication.
All right, nice. And do you think more businesses will kind of evolve their project plans to use BIM and 4D? Have you seen examples of where this has worked successfully already?
I know that some companies are acquiring BIM. I'm not sure how much they are using it. Probably one of the downsides of it is it's pretty time consuming to set up. So you can use it within the construction process. But it really depends on how complex projects will go. I think the more complex they get, the bigger amount of quality information needs to be communicated. And I think that companies will need to, look up to BIM for helping out in those really complex projects.
Thanks. You mentioned earlier when you were talking to Dale, you mentioned the term lean project management. What do you mean by that? Is that?
Yeah, so lean project management is basically chopping up the activities in the schedule into steps.
Okay.
So you can get more of a agile approach to the tasks. And as Dale said, there is a bit of a controversy between whether to use it or not, because there's two different segments here. You're chopping up the plan into, it really depends on which level would be looking at it. So I think the level, the field workers which are actually executing the activities would look at the steps, and then looking at it from a, from a zoomed out perspective would be the planner.
Okay, it's interesting. It's a bit of a shift in how we do things. I'd like to get your thoughts on the coming trends in the planning industry. We mentioned some things earlier. So what do you think will be the coming trends in the next, say, 5 to 10 years? So specifically in the planning industry, and especially the project planner role. Sorry, do you think that will change in 5 to 10 years time? Will we be doing different things? What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think that the planner role will change in the upcoming 10 years or so, but I think the approach will change. The way that things are done will change. Coming from a technology background, I'm always, coming back to the technology aspect, but yeah, technologically, I think there'll be enormous improvements in the way the solutions are working. I think we'll be seeing a lot more information coming into these systems, and predictions, AI, external data sources. It won't be just the project plan itself showing the information, but a lot more sources.
That would require a bit of a shift in how, many planners are stuck in their Primavera schedules. And if you're saying we're moving to these new technologies, will they have to learn these new technologies? Should people be learning now? Are they going to be redundant in a few years?
It doesn't mean that they'll be switching from Primavera P6, but solutions will be made available that integrate with Primavera P6 and just give you another layer of information. So I think Primavera P6 as a solution will always be there. I mean, it is one of the best scheduling and planning tools out there, right? So it's not that Primavera won't exist. It will always exist, and it will always be used by the industry. It's just that there'll be other solutions that will be working together with Primavera P6, providing an extra layer of information and technology.
Okay, so it's effectively bringing it up a level.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to simplify it to the right
project management.
Something like that. We'll see. So at the start of the pod, you mentioned, the subject you're really interested in is effectively communicating schedules. Are there any metrics that we can use? Dale, Val, and I all love metrics and KPIs, measurements. Are there anything that we can use to measure how effective a schedule has been communicated? How do you kind of understand how effective you've been to the businesses that you're consulting with your technology?
Yeah. So, for example, communicating project information by sending out a 100-page PDF, I'd say is not an effective way of communicating the information, because then someone has to go through a static file and they can't filter anything, they can't group anything, they can't change the view. They can pretty much do nothing with it. So, yeah, I think that first of all, when a company chooses a solution, not only does it have to be a solution that gets the job done, but it also has to be a solution that includes all. So what we're doing with P6 at the moment is we're licensing schedulers and planners, and then everyone else is getting a PDF. That we're not including the whole company within the project schedule. And I think that there is a huge lack of communication due to that.
Are there any specific measurements that we're saying? So I think we'll all agree, Primavera is not the most exciting tool. We all agree it should be simplified, dumbed down, if you like, management friendly, which is kind of what you're doing. But how do we know that we're doing a good job? Is it people acting upon it? Is it seeing it on the walls of the offices or on sites? Is there anything specifically you kind of take from your businesses to know that you've been effective?
I think the effectiveness is measured through the effectiveness of getting the activities done. You can't really put out a measurement and say, okay, our communication process is 9 out of 10 now with this or without it. But
understood.
Yeah, I think that when you have better communication than what you've had previously, it's not only that it's noticed within the company, but it's also noticed with the workload that's getting done, and less mistakes and so on and so forth. So,
Val,
but as a measurement, like 9 out of 10, we don't have a system like that.
Oh no, I completely understand. Just like whether there were certain things that your company uses. I know it's not 9 out of 10, 1 out of 10, but
yeah.
It was just interesting how you kind of kind of measure it yourselves. Val, you look like you want to ask a question there.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you, Machine Gun Martin. It's useful because Bojan, we come from a place of curiosity. So we're very curious cats, all three of us. And so when we do drill into these questions, we're really not concerned, but we're concerned about our own biases, and we want to make sure that the perspectives that we're consuming are not just our own, and that there's consensus there. You mentioned before as well, lean project management. So when I hear people say lean, it always pricks my ears up because it's one of those things that's abstract, and when you have abstracts, you have different meanings. So it's different to saying this is a table. We can all agree a table is a table, a chair is a chair. But when you start talking about things that are almost like nominalizations, then it's interesting, right? So when you say lean, my view of lean was about maximizing value, minimizing waste, right? That was my concept. And most people, and I'm not saying it's you, Bojan, most people focus on the minimization of waste. How can we maximize value from your perspective using the lean management methodology?
Maximizing value through the lean management methodology, I think by chopping up the plan into bits and pieces that we can pass down to field workers, which they understand, we can basically boost our communication process throughout the company. Because an activity is an activity. It's fine, but the activity consists of several tasks to be completed. It's not just one part of it and it's done. So basically, chopping the activity up into actual workloads that a certain employee has to finish will enable us to pass that information down to him, so he knows exactly what needs to be done at what time and with what due date.
And
So
I agree. And go back.
I think boosting this communication process in such a way will actually increase value as well.
And with scale and complexity, you were saying before, comes volume. And I see a system, it starts small. You think about the cogs, right? Because cogs are the easiest, and then you add more cogs, you add more cogs, you add more cogs, and obviously they're all integrated, right? So this is how humans kind of have to work together. We have to think about the whole, not just the part. And schedule is just one part of a very big, multifaceted way to plan a project, but then also maintain and deliver and analyze a project. But your point of breaking it down to that nth degree, does that not add more waste if you then add the concept of administration in there? So you're adding more administration, and effectively, any value that was created by creating a detailed schedule is then kind of null and void because you're adding the same amount of administration, which is wastage, unless, and you're saying it would be solved by technology, and technology would automatically do that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it really depends on how we're looking at this waste, right? If it's helping us get the projects done more efficiently, then it works better. So yes, it does add more waste, but it really depends on what we can do with that waste afterwards, because then we can pull out that waste, analyze it, see what's been going wrong in the past 5-6 projects, and see where we're falling back. So it is adding more waste, but that waste is information that can further be gathered, analyzed, and decisions brought upon that. So
yeah, I think we have to go back to the methodology versus software and say methodology rules, because we've been discussing software and systems, but actually what we're talking about is what drives those softwares and systems, which is methodologies. And as you said, lean management would be a useful one to apply, because obviously there is value in a software reducing wastage, because arguably there's a return on investment, right? So when I imagine with a software company, people go to you and they say, what's the benefit of X? And you say, well, we can save you X, Y, Z on this. We can save you costs. We can save you errors. We can save you damages. We can increase or improve the communications, as you quite rightly said. What is the best, and I don't know if you've struck a deal here, and I don't think it's a perfect model for it, but what's the best software licensing model for projects? Because obviously if it's a good project tool, we want as many projects to use it, because again, we need practitioners in the projects to be familiar with effective communication tools. I think that's a benefit for everybody. But problem I see is people go from one project to the next, and we might go from, as you said, OpenPlan, we might go to Oracle, then we go to Microsoft Project, then we go to Monday, then we're going to Jira, then we're going to all of these different things, then we're going to Seavus. Like, how do we be not the jack of all trades, but be a bit more specialized? Is there some way to do that within your platforms? Are you looking at that bridging technology?
What I believe for a project management solution, and for all project management solutions, I think that the licensing model is probably the most important for the solution to actually be usable. What I think is the correct way to go is licensing per project, not per user, because this enables the company to have inclusion of all participants in a project. The per user licensing, in my opinion, gives a bit of a, it disincludes people. So basically the company chooses who gets to use the solution, who doesn't get to use the solution, then they cut costs, and people that need the solution don't have it, and so on. So yeah, I think from an IT perspective, per project licensing would be the way to go.
That's great. And I was just going to comment before I hand back to Dale on Oracle. I mean, if Oracle is listening, it won't take them a lot of effort to just change the bloody user experience to make it a little bit more sexy. Just different colors would be great. Let's start there. And then maybe, change that bar from the 98 bar, which looks like it was from the original internet browser, to something that people actually want to play with. Again, we've got to attract young people to this industry, and we've got these software companies that don't seem to see the value in having things cool to look at. I find it amazing, and it blows my mind. Last question from me before I hand off to Dale, because it's always the one I ask tech gurus such as yourself, is about the future of software. So where do you see us in like 5-10 years? And don't say P6, because I'll be really upset if you say that. But where do you see, I mean, the metaverse is a big thing at the moment. Model-based planning is a big thing at the moment. Digital twins is a big thing at the moment. I won't say AI, but I'll say machine learning is a thing that people can now get their heads around. I know, for example, there are government agencies in Australia today. I don't know why they're doing this, but they have working groups around quantum computing. Where exactly, and go as far as you like, I'm saying 5-10 years, but if you want to go 50, go for it. Take your head wherever you like, but where is it going from a planning, software, and effective communication perspective?
I think I'm seeing it going into machine learning, AI, augmented reality. So basically, we'll be able to see what we're building, not 5D, but through our device, see it with coordinates, GPS, where it should lay, how it will look, enabling us to take down the walls, see the piping, see the electrical within it. And yeah, I think it's more of a question of how fast the industry will adopt the solutions rather than how fast the solutions will develop. Because, the construction industry is a bit of a dinosaur industry, right? It's really hard to get schedulers, planners to migrate from P6 to another solution. It's pretty much impossible. So I think it's more of a question of how fast the industry accepts the new solutions. The faster the industry, the people accept the new solutions, the faster the IT companies will rush to develop solutions that will be much more than what we have today.
Yeah, I agree. There's, I've seen just an observation, even from 5-6 years ago, the number of software companies now in the project management market is massive, and it never really was before then. And so you do have these dinosaur tools that everyone's used to, and I guess it goes back to Dale's point as well. It's not necessarily about what methodology or even tool; it's about the behaviors. And you need something that shocks them. Maybe aliens or something. I mean, we had COVID, which was a great reset in many ways in how we do things, where we work, how we work, what tools we use. It definitely shifted the perspectives, I think, forever. Right? We can all agree that we'll never be the same because of COVID. And I wonder if something else like that could shift the mindset to move us to something else. Let's say machine learning gets so good, Mohan, wakes up, makes you eggs in the morning and says, let's plan a project together. And then it immerses you in an environment. You like this, yeah? I love these thought experiments. Anyway, so I do think that it'll take some innovative people and disruptors in the market. And, I kind of like the Dan Patterson style of just going in and breaking methodologies to see what else there is and taming projects, which is a really cool concept. And then being inspired by natural systems, which is what Dave Snowden's doing. So we've had some great opportunities to speak some really clever guys in this space. But yeah, just wanted to leave you with that ponder and that thought, and I'd love to have a follow up at some point. But yeah, over to you, Dale.
Thanks, Val. And again, apologies for Val Bojan, because there must be something in the Sydney water. He's got cockroaches, aliens.
I think it's the cockroaches.
Yeah, I think he's maybe one of the men in black as well. Zapping something. We'll clear your memory at the end of this podcast that you were ever here as well. So, or at least Val's bit. But just to bring it back, something you said at the very top of the podcast about your experience is that a lot of it is acquired through the eyes of your clients that you work with. And I wonder, as you talk to them and try and gain perspective of the various industries, what are some of the key challenges that they're finding today with their scheduling tools and systems? Because at least from my perspective, I think we've picked some holes in it today. In some respects, the schedule feels like an administrative burden where you've got it because the contract says you need to have it, or because some executive high up says we need to have a schedule so that we can track the milestones, but no one actually really follows it because it's not realistic. And we're tracking against something that actually isn't any relevant anymore, and we can't make any really informed management decisions. And that's kind of a bit of a, a bit of a script almost these days that I continue to hear throughout working with different organizations. Are there any trends that you see or hear talking to your clients that we should be aware of that are particularly big challenges that organizations are trying to overcome when it comes to scheduling a project?
So I don't think that you haven't heard any of them, but yeah, some of them are basically, we're seeing more and more companies looking at solutions that will actually include all of their employees, rather than solutions that only few employees have, and then they're forced to share the schedule in this or that way, whether it's exporting PDF, XLS, or whatever. Also, another challenge that companies are seeing is, yes, it's a burden. P6 is a burden that's been implemented by the contracting party, right? But the owner of the project, it's not a problem for him because he has P6. But then you've got all these smaller contractors that he can't pass over the P6 plan to because they don't have P6. When you have a large number of contractors all using different types of solutions, the problem for the owner is that he's getting information sources from all these different solutions, and he can't pretty much make sense of them. So yeah, those are the two main problems that we are seeing at the moment. Again, these are problems that are directly, IT based. So being an IT guy, I pretty much know the IT problems and the solution problems that companies are having. But as in the functional problems, the scheduling and the planning problems, I don't really know them because that's not my background. Yeah, solution-wise, there are a lot of problems. There's a lot of things that can be worked on. And seeing the space from an IT perspective, companies using P6 don't really have a lot of tools around P6 that can help them out. So there's a lot of place where IT companies can improve the whole project planning process.
Yeah, no, very, very good points. Hey, look, I'd love to ask you a ton more questions, but we do have to make some space for our feature. So for this, I'm going to bring back Machine Gun Martin to take you through your paces. Over to you, Martin.
Thanks, Dale. Yeah, we've got time for one quick feature. It's called Fiverr. It's 5 quick-fire questions all about yourself. Nothing quite as intimidating as what Val was trying to press you on earlier. So yeah, if you're ready, we can make a start. Okay, so question 1. What are the 3 must-have behaviors you look for in successful project teams?
Project questions, really? An IT guy.
Or successful IT teams then?
Successful IT teams.
Must have behaviors.
Behaviors. Proactive, knowledgeable, agile.
What's the best planning software?
P6.
Thought I'd stick that one in. What's the one piece of advice for people new to the IT profession?
have fun.
I think you need to. What would be your book recommendation to our listeners?
The 5-minute manager managing the monkey.
Interesting. Look that one up. And last one, if you had your time again, would you go straight into planning, try project management, or start again in IT?
Well, that's a tough one. Start again in IT.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you very much.
Bojan, thank you so much for being such a good sport. Thank you for putting up with us as well, because we can be a really confusing bunch. It's difficult to understand South African, Australian, and I don't know what Martin speaks. It's not English, but anyway, thank you for putting up with our various languages. But before we let you go, are there any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
No, thank you as well, Dale. I had a lot of fun, especially, having this chat with knowledgeable project control, scheduling and planning professionals. So yeah, you guys hit me up well in the project managing space. For last thoughts, I think it was a great talk. I think that IT solutions will be moving really fast in the future, because I think that COVID taught us all that we have to start digitalizing much quicker than what we are. So I'm expecting the community to take on the challenge of accepting new solutions. With that, they'll enable the IT companies to develop much faster and much better. So yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for watching this. I'd like to thank you, Martin, and Vale for this podcast, and it was a pleasure to be here. Even though you guys hit me up quite well in the project management.
You know what? It's always great to get different perspectives, and I think you're one of the few that have come on really from the IT perspective. So we do thank you for providing your insight as well. But Val, before we let you go, what's your final thoughts?
Firstly, Dale, it's Vale. Anyway, look, yeah, it was great to have you on. And again, this is a sports show. It's enabling us to hurt our own brains as much as yours. And these thought experiments, you walk away from these podcasts and you get a sense of different understanding and perspective. And I really appreciate you being on the show. And yeah, do keep in touch. We'd love to hear more from you.
Great. Thanks very much, Vale.
Thanks very much. Well, folks, there you've heard it. That is all the time we have for this episode. But remember, if you like what you've heard, please do help us pay it forward by sharing a link to this episode on your favorite social media. A massive thank you once again to our guest, Bojan Tasevski. I think I got that right. And thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From me, Val, and Martin, it's bye for now.